In a world where technology can alter our perception of reality, what happens when the lines between consciousness, ethics, and love begin to blur? Welcome to Happiness of Love, your daily dose of K-dramas. Get ready to fall in love with unforgettable stories. Can you tell us where are you listening from? The sound of thunder cracked through the night as Lee Minji stood outside her former home, its shadows clinging to her like a bitter reminder of everything she had lost. Rain poured down in torrents, soaking through her clothes, but nothing felt colder than the hollow ache in her chest. She had fought tooth and nail to build a life for herself and her grandmother, but that fierce determination was now washed away by the harsh reality of betrayal and unexpected debt. Her home was nothing more than a memory, and the warmth of her grandmother's laughter felt like a cruel joke. The weight of despair threatened to crush her, but even in her darkest hour, Minji refused to surrender. She wiped the rain from her eyes and gathered her resolve, a flicker of hope still burned within. Clenching her fists around her umbrella, she knew there was only one person she could turn to, the man whose very name brought bile to her throat, Kim Jae-won. At the opulent K-group gala, the air was thick with wealth and privilege, the laughter of aplenty masking the darkness that lay beneath the surface. Jae-won, the epitome of cold elegance, moved with an air of confidence that caused envy to ripple through the crowd. To them, he was a king, endorsed by power, manipulating the strings of the elite. But to Minji, he was the personification of everything she despised, the man whose father had taken her father's life and soul by unraveling the very fabric of her childhood. She knew beyond a shadow of a doubt he would dismiss her with the same cruel efficiency he used to crush his competitors. Steeling herself, she entered the gala against her better judgment, her heart pounding with equal parts fear and defiance. Desperate and trembling, Minji approached him, her voice breaking through the noise, beseeching him to listen, to see her for more than a mere beggar. He turned, initially intrigued but quickly shifting to disdain, his icy gaze locking onto her with a mixture of irritation and amusement. Jae-won's lips curled into a mocking smile as he surveyed her drenched form, the stark contrast between her disheveled appearance and the glamorous figures surrounding them only deepening his contempt. He uttered words that pierced through her like shards of glass, dismissing her as a desperate girl clinging to unrealistic hopes. The laughter of the elite echoed around them, every chuckle a reminder of her insignificance in their polished world. Minji fought to keep her chin raised, refusing to let the humiliation consume her, but deep down, the heartbreak cut deep. Just as she turned to flee the scene, a loud crash ricocheted through the air. An intricate chandelier, swaying dangerously above their heads, plummeted. Minji instinctively lunged forward, pulling Jae-won to safety even as chaos erupted in the room. The world around them blurred into a cacophony of shouts and shattering glass, but in that moment of desperate courage, their fates intertwined. He was relentless, his rugged grip tightening around her wrist, and as they stumbled out, the depths of his gaze caught hers in a way that sparked something unnameable, a flicker of surprise, an unexpected warmth amid the fear. Once outside, as he leaned against the cold marble of the building, catching his breath, Minji's heart raced not only from fear but from the intoxicating rush of adrenaline. Jae-won had abandoned his facade, for just a moment, and something flickered in the corners of his stoic demeanor. Yet, as quickly as it came, it vanished, replaced by the same cold mask he wore. He surveyed her with skepticism and barely concealed irritation, reminding her that this was no fairy tale, and she was still nothing but a nuisance. In a voice softened by the flux of emotions, he uttered words that would seal her fate: a 6-month contract to work directly under him, enough money to pay off her debts. But with that offer came the realization that her life was about to spiral into a labyrinth of secrets and lies, with Jae-won at the center of it all. She had no idea how deep the shadows ran, nor the darkness that lay ahead, but as she stared into his calculating eyes, a strange new tension sparked between them, one that hinted at an unpredictable depth beneath their animosity. A connection was being forged amid the trauma and chaos, but Minji was too familiar with underlying dangers to trust it, or him, just yet. Desperate and out of options, Lee Minji storms into the high society gala, her heart pounding as she brushes the rain from her disheveled hair. The grandeur of the event is overwhelming. Glistening chandeliers hang like stars from a soft velvet sky, and the laughter of the elite rings hollow around her. She feels a stark contrast in the soft silk and shimmering tuxedos that envelop the room, and in her soaked dress, she stands out like a sore thumb amidst the opulence. The glances directed her way are filled with disdain and raised brows as she trudges past tables laden with delicate canapes, the voice inside her urging her to remain invisible. Yet, she can't turn back. The desperation for help spurs her on, echoing in her thoughts as she navigates through the whispers that slice through the air like daggers aimed straight at her pride. Finally, she spots him, Kim Jae-won, a figure of cold precision at the center of an admiring circle, exuding a dominance that commands the room's attention with effortless ease. His dark, brooding eyes scan the crowd, showing no recognition of her presence until, driven by a mix of determination and courage she could hardly muster, she pushes through the throng to stand before him. She drops to her knees, the chill of the marble floor seeping through her trembling hands clutching the foreclosure notice that feels like a physical weight dragging her down. Her voice, fragile and desperate, breaks through the mocking laughter surrounding her, as she pleads for his help, laying bare her vulnerability in front of a man renowned for his ruthlessness. The air is heavy with tension, every eye watching the spectacle unfold before them. But Jaiwan's gaze is as unyielding as steel, his lips curl into a disdainful smirk as he surveys her, words dripping with condescension as he declares that people like her always appear when they need money and he is not a charity. His voice reverberates in her ears, met with a chorus of cruel laughter from the guests, a cacophony that amplifies her shame. Time seems to slow as Minji feels her heart shatter beneath the weight of his dismissal. This was not just a rejection, but a stripping away of her dignity. Security guards step forward, their expressions part bemusement, part contempt, before roughly dragging her toward the exit. With each step, she hears the snickers and whispers escalating, until she is thrown onto the rain-soaked pavement outside, the cold seeping through her skin as reality crashes down around her. Minji's pleas fade into the night, her heart filled with humiliation and despair, wondering if she has truly reached the end of the road, all because of a man who sees nothing but numbers and profit. Just when Lee Minji thinks the night couldn't get worse, a blinding set of headlights pierces through the chaotic swirl of rain, illuminating the lavish gala just moments ago filled with laughter and murmurs of social elites. A speeding car careens toward her, and time seems to freeze, her body caught in sheer panic, unwilling to budge from the impending doom. Just as the reality of the situation weighs heavy on her, a powerful hand seizes her wrist with an urgency that jolts her senses back to life. She collides against a solid chest, strong and reassuring, collapsing the barrier of disdain that had filled the air between them moments earlier. Lee Minji looks up, breathless and soaking from the downpour, only to be met with the intense gaze of Kim Jaiwan, the very man who had humiliated her on the opulent staircase just minutes before. The cold facade he wears does little to mask the flicker of something deeper in his eyes. Was it instinct? Was there a hidden humanity in the CEO who prided himself on detachment? Before she can make sense of this bizarre turn of events, Jaiwan abruptly releases her, stepping back to reclaim his imposing demeanor. He straightens his suit, the fabric imbued with authority, as he commands his driver with an icy finality, "Take her home. I don't want to see her again." The luxurious car, gleaming like a predator in the night, pulls away with a rumble, leaving Minji in a tempest of confusion and anonymity. How could the man who so easily dismissed her as a desperate beggar now be the one to save her from certain disaster? A spiral of questions floods her mind, but the pulsating rhythm of the rain drumming against her skin does little to soothe the chaos swirling inside her heart. With the remnants of the gala's laughter echoing in her ears and the buzz of societal whispers fading into darkness, she stands abandoned in the pouring rain, heart-pounding. Was this encounter a mere twist of fate, or a sign that perhaps their fates were entangled in ways neither could foresee? In her desperation, she finds herself pondering the intricate web of secrets that tie them more closely than she could have possibly imagined. As the rain continues to fall, she feels the weight of their shared complexities drawing her deeper into uncharted territory, each drop a reminder of the battles that lay ahead, and the undeniable, uninvited connection that lingers in the air between them. The next morning, the sun spilled soft light through the sheer curtains of Lee Minji's small apartment, illuminating the remnants of her chaotic life. Her phone buzzed aggressively on the worn table, the vibration echoing in the hush of the early hour. Bracing herself, she glanced at the screen, her heart racing when she saw the caller ID K Group headquarters. With a mix of confusion and trepidation, she answered, her voice hesitant and small, tinged with lingering disbelief at how she'd come to this point. As she entered the imposing skyscraper of K Group, the grand lobby stretched high above her, the polished marble gleaming under the vast chandeliers that sparkled like stars amidst the halo of corporate ambition. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and fresh coffee, a stark reminder of the world she had just crashed into. Guided by an impeccably dressed assistant who seemed more a part of the decor than a person, Minji was escorted to Kim Jaiwan's office. Each step felt heavier, echoing her uncertainty in the competitive atmosphere of high society that buzzed around her. Finally, she stood before the intricately designed doors, her heart pounding in rhythm with her thoughts that darted like caged birds. The moment she stepped inside, she was met with the sight of Jaiwan seated behind his massive desk, a picture of confidence and authority that seemed almost tangible. His back was straight, his expression unreadable, as though he were carved from granite, the magnificent architecture of the office matching his icy demeanor. Before she could wrap her head around why she was there, he looked up, his piercing gaze locking onto hers as he spoke with a tone rich in command, "Work for me for 6 months. I'll pay you enough to settle your debts and take care of your grandmother." The shock cut through Minji like a swift knife, sending a wave of disbelief crashing over her. She stood frozen, grappling with the absurdity of his offer, her mind racing with unspoken questions. How could he possibly have any empathy for her struggles when he had once dismissed her so cruelly? The raw pain of that memory flickered in her chest, igniting the stubborn fighter within her. "What's the catch?" she managed to say, determination weaving through her anxious words. His dismissive expression remained unruffled, as if she were just one of many obstacles in his path. "Consider it an exchange," he replied coolly, his tone making it clear that he expected no further discussion. Deep down, Minji's instinct screamed at her not to trust a man like him. She felt the weight of his eyes, calculating and cold, yet here she was, driven to entertain the reckless gamble he was proposing. With each passing second in his lavishly daunting office, the gravity of her situation turned from dire to desperate. As she turned to leave, her heart heavy with confusion, the air felt electric, a strange tension that seemed to thrum between them. The walls of Jaiwan's office were adorned with artwork that spoke of wealth and a world she had never belonged to, each piece a reminder of her own insignificance. Yet, within that daunting space, a stir of defiance began to blossom in her chest. Why did this man, who so openly represented everything she despised, evoke such a complex blend of emotions in her? Was it merely the stark reality of her situation, or was there something deeper, some hidden connection that had yet to reveal itself? Through the glass walls, the city pulsed with life outside, reminding her of the world beyond Jaiwan's reach. She could have walked away, but a flicker of hope ignited within her, a flicker she had not dared to feel in a long time. As she stepped back into the bustling lobby, the scent of ambition mingled with her resolve. There was more to his proposal than met the eye, and for the first time in years, Minji felt herself stepping into a game of power she never asked to play. But she would not go in unaware. She would uncover the layers of deception surrounding her father's death and the secrets that taunted her with every passing moment. And perhaps, while she navigated this treacherous path alongside the cold-hearted CEO, she would discover more than just the truth. She might find herself entangled in the complexities of her own heart. As the days turned into weeks, Minji found herself swallowed by the overwhelming aura of K Group, a labyrinth of sterile offices and cold marble floors that mirrored the distant, polished facades of its employees. Each day was a battle where she grappled with tasks meant to push her to the brink, from organizing endless spreadsheets to tackling perplexing requests from her sharp-tongued colleagues who viewed her as little more than an intruder in their realm. Her heart burned with resilience, but each curt laugh and scornful glance chipped away at her fiery spirit. Every time the elevator doors chimed open, she felt the weight of judgment, their gazes piercing through her, making her painfully aware of her outsider status. Yet, as she pored over the complexity of corporate protocols, something curious began to take root within her, a relentless urge not just to survive but to thrive, even in this unforgiving environment. She caught glimpses of Jaiwan during meetings, a figure of control who commanded respect with every command. Yet despite his icy demeanor, there were moments when their eyes met, and she could feel the unspoken intensity that lay just beneath the surface, a sense of intrigue that both frightened and fascinated her. One evening, when the shadows of twilight stretched long and the office was nearly deserted, the muted sounds of typing surrounded her like a cocoon, a rare moment of solitude amid the chaos. In the solitude, Minji continued rifling through filing cabinets, organizing the endless sea of documents. Suddenly, her fingers brushed against a cluttered folder labeled with her father's name, a jolt of electricity coursing through her veins as she hesitated for a moment before pulling it free. Her curiosity soon morphed into horror as she flipped through pages detailing investigations and reports surrounding her father's death, his name mentioned amidst words she had long buried in her mind: accident, negligence, and cover-up. Each word felt like a dagger to her chest, reopening wounds she thought had healed in time. Her thoughts raced as she tried to untangle the threads of memories and buried truths. What could Jaiwan possibly know? Why was he tangled in this web of her past? The anger that coursed through her made her heart pound in her ears, but there was an unsettling realization: too such information would only deepen the chasm of their already complex relationship. Driven by a mix of fury and desperation, she stormed into Jaiwan's office without permission, her heart drumming an unpredictable beat. He looked up, an amused glimmer flickering in his eyes, as if he had been waiting for her to confront him. Leaning back in his black leather chair, he exuded an air of arrogance, yet there was an unmistakable intrigue dancing beneath his composed surface. Minji's breath hitched as she slammed the folder onto the desk between them, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her voice strained but resolute, demanding answers for the pain she had carried alone for so long. Jaiwan merely tilted his head, an inscrutable expression crossing his features, and a knowing smirk played at the corners of his mouth as he relished the power of her turmoil. "I was curious about how long it would take you to find that," he said, his tone laced with a mix of challenge and amusement that made her blood boil. She felt her hands clench into fists as she tried to hold her ground amidst the swirling emotions. "This isn't a game, Jaiwan," she responded vehemently, the words tumbling from her lips as she fought to quell both her anger and her rising fears. The severity of her father's unexplained demise weighed heavily in the air, and she refused to back down. Yet, within the tangled strands of her defiance, there was also an odd vulnerability. The icy wall Jaiwan maintained was beginning to show cracks, revealing glimpses of something deeper, something she could neither understand nor deny. As they stood locked in this electrifying exchange, tension crackled like unseen lightning, a dangerous bond weaving between their shared histories that neither could deny any longer. The stakes had risen, and as Minji prepared to further unravel the truth, she realized that Jaiwan was not just the cold CEO, he might be the key to unearthing the very secrets that threatened to consume them both. Minji stood by the window of her cramped apartment, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, a deceptive beauty that masked the turmoil spiraling within her. Her heart raced as she replayed the sinister voice from the anonymous phone call in her mind. The distorted words echoed, chilling her to the bone. No longer was this search simply about uncovering her father's past, it was a dangerous game unveiled with threats cloaked in shadows. The trembling in her hands revealed her mounting fear, but deep inside, a fire ignited, urging her to confront whatever forces were determined to silence her. As she scoured through her father's old letters and documents, piecing together fragments of a life lost, the walls seemed to close in around her. It was in one of those letters that she discovered a name that sent a jolt through her nerves. Kim Tae-hwan, the powerful former chairman of K Group and Jaiwan's father, was implicated in financial crimes that correlated with the mysterious circumstances surrounding her father's death. The flickering light of her desk lamp illuminated her resolve, she would not be intimidated. It became a vow, etched in her heart, if her father's death wasn't an accident, she would expose those responsible, no matter the cost. She knew the risks, but Minji refused to let fear dictate her actions. Later that evening, she approached Jaiwan in his towering office, her pulse quickening with each step. The sleek, modern decor of K Group encapsulated a world she once viewed from the outside, but now she was determined to infiltrate it, one secret at a time. Jaiwan, engrossed in reports and stock forecasts, lifted his gaze when she entered, his expression a meticulously crafted mask of indifference. "What is it, Minji?" he asked, his voice smooth yet lacking warmth. But the tension in the air crackled with an unspoken electricity as she squared her shoulders, emboldened by the truth she sought. She demanded answers, her words spilling forth with the intensity she felt brewing inside, revealing the connection between his father's dealings and her past. Jaiwan's eyes darkened, a storm of emotion swirling beneath his carefully composed exterior. At first, he remained silent, as if weighing her words against the reality he had long accepted. Then, he spoke, his voice low and firm, "There are things you're better off not knowing." For a brief moment, she witnessed a crack in his stoic demeanor, a glimpse of vulnerability that made her heart skip. She saw the turmoil behind his steely facade, an uncharted layer he had hidden away, yet she pressed on, undeterred by his warning. "If my father was involved in something dangerous, I need to know the truth. I need to understand why his life was taken," she asserted, unwavering. Jaiwan leaned back in his luxurious chair, the lines of tension on his forehead etched deeper as he absorbed her tenacity. The weight of his legacy pressed down on him, and for the first time, the fortress he had built around his heart felt like a prison, closing in tighter with each revelation. He could see the way Minji's passion sparked a fire within her, igniting a fierce determination to fight for her father's memory, but he also recognized the reckless danger that came with such fervor. Somewhere within this delicate balance, a part of him wanted to protect her from the darkness that loomed, yet another part felt the undeniable pull toward her resilience, a trait he had long since buried beneath a veneer of cold ambition. The tension between them escalated into a charged silence, one fraught with layers of understanding that neither was willing to acknowledge. At that moment, as they stood on the precipice of a brewing storm, Minji felt the enormity of their situation. She could almost hear the echoes of danger whispering from the shadows, and a chill ran through her. But with every passing heartbeat, her will only strengthened. She had come too far to back down now, determined to unearth the secrets and betrayals that ensnared her within a web spun by Jaiwan's family. With her heart anchored to the truth of her father's legacy, Minji resolved to forge ahead, and as the days turned into a whirlwind of investigation and clandestine meetings, she found herself immersed deeper into the underbelly of the corporate world. Late at night, while other employees wound down, she courageously sifted through files thick with deception, carefully delineating who could be trusted. Each new layer she peeled back revealed more connections, not only to her father but also tangled threads that linked Jaiwan's family to darker dealings, complexities that twisted fate in unforeseen ways. But as danger lurked closer, she felt the undeniable connection growing between her and Jaiwan. An intense attraction unfolded amidst the peril, each glance lingering a fraction too long, creating a tension that left them both breathless. Yet, every moment she spent unraveling the past came with its own toll. Shadows loomed not just over her father's story, but around the man before her, stirring feelings she had vowed to resist. With the unyielding weight of the truth bearing down on them, Minji couldn't shake the nagging thought that the memories of the past might consume them both, drowning out any flicker of a future together. As the rainy season drenched the streets of Seoul, filling the air with a thick humidity that clung to the skin, Lee Minji stood in Jaewon's sleek office, shadows dancing around her as the soft glow of the city lights spilled through the expansive windows. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within her, a swirl of anxiety and resolve threatening to consume her. They had just decided to join forces against Jaewon's father, Kim Tae-hwan, and the weight of this pact felt almost unbearable. Jaewon, whose icy demeanor had always been a shield against the world, now wore an expression she had never seen before, determination mixed with a flicker of fear that he was trying hard to mask. He said that confronting his father would not only risk their safety but unravel the carefully constructed facade of his life. While Minji felt the pulse of her racing heart as she affirmed her commitment to seeing this through, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty deep within her. Their partnership began in a confined corner of Jaewon's office, a space designed for power plays and corporate secrets. As they sifted through documents and leads, old memories of her father flooded Minji's thoughts, reminding her why she had to fight. With each revelation she made about Taehwan's past dealings, she felt that familiar flame of justice ignite within her, even as Jaewon's gaze seemed to soften, occasionally revealing something resembling empathy in his otherwise hardened expression. The silence was punctuated only by the rustling of papers and the rhythmic tapping of Jaewon's fingers on the desk, a frustration evident as they teetered closer to an uncomfortable truth. Minji could sense it lurking, just out of reach. Days passed in a haze of dark cloak and dagger meetings, late nights poring over classified files, and tense conversations that tugged at the fragile thread between them. Even in moments of levity, laughter bubbled up like rare champagne, sparkling yet tainted with the weight of their reality. When Jaewon cracked a sarcastic joke about their less-than-glamorous nightly menu of instant noodles, Minji responded by rolling her eyes, but the warmth in her heart was unmistakable. Yet, the encroaching danger began to wrap around them like a noose, tightening with every piece of evidence they collected. It started with subtle signs of shadow that lingered too long, a black car tailing them through the narrow streets of Gangnam, and soon escalated into open threats. A menacing figure appeared at their heels more often than not, watching and waiting, while Minji tried to brush it off with humor, saying that they must have a fan club. However, Jaewon's shoulders squared as he instinctively moved closer to her, an uncharacteristic protectiveness emerging from his core, an emotion he was struggling to understand. One late evening, as the rain drummed insistently on the office windows, turning the world outside into a blurred canvas of gray, everything changed. While Jaewon meticulously reviewed a file that contained incriminating evidence against his father, Minji's instincts flared. Just as they shared a brief moment of unguarded contemplation about their lives, Jaewon hinting at how he longed to break free from his father's oppressive shadow, an ominous knock echoed through the corridor. The air turned electric, and Jaewon's expression morphed from contemplative to alert in an instant. He glanced at Minji, his eyes darkened with a mix of fury and concern. "Stay behind me," he insisted, his tone sharper than she had ever heard. Her heart raced as she watched him stride toward the door, his figure now a sentinel against the uncertainty that loomed. The door swung open to reveal Young Tae-soo, the detective who had unexpectedly intertwined his fate with theirs. Breathless from haste, Tae-soo warned them that they had been compromised. Someone within their inner circle was feeding information to Tae-hwan. The eruption of reality crashed upon Minji like the storm outside, pulling her back from the edge of hope. The weight of betrayal hung in the air, wrapped tightly around them, and Jaewon, normally unfazed by threats, looked visibly shaken. His fingers danced nervously on the edge of the table as he processed the implications. "We need to get out of here," he directed, his voice taut with urgency. It wasn't just a physical escape they needed, it was a retreat from the trust that was eroding beneath their feet. Together, the three of them formed a plan to extract whatever proof they had and lay low until they could pinpoint the traitor in their midst. The intensity of their predicament drew Minji and Jaewon closer, each look stolen between them now laden with unspoken words, their alliance evolving into a shelter against the storm of threats pressing in on them. But within the swirling chaos of danger and deception, a different storm brewed, one of undeniable attraction that neither could afford to acknowledge yet felt clamoring just beneath the surface. As they moved swiftly through the darkened hallways of the building, pulse racing and hearts thrumming, all Minji could think was how perilous their path had become, and how maybe, just maybe, they had begun to rely on one another in ways that could ignite a fuse neither had anticipated. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky painted a canvas of deep oranges and purples, the evening air thick with tension as Minji and Jaewon huddled in the dimly lit backroom of a rundown cafe. Shadows danced around them unnervingly, echoing the uncertainty that had woven itself into the fabric of their lives. Minji felt the weight of their predicament settle heavily in her chest, amplifying her sense of vulnerability, yet within that weight lay a fierce resolve. She shot Jaiwan a glance, his face a mask of concentration, eyes scanning the tiny space as though they could sense the unseen enemies lurking outside. It was an odd juxtaposition, him, the untouchable CEO known for his ruthless business acumen, now staring at her with a blend of intensity and fear that spoke volumes about how precariously balanced their alliance had become. "We need to take control of this narrative. If we go down, I want it to be on our terms," she said, the fire in her voice igniting something in him. He nodded, swallowing the lump of dread rising in his throat as he contemplated their next move. Hours of speculation had led them to a crucial decision. They needed to use the media as their blade, thrusting it deep into the heart of corporate deception that had ensnared them both. Together, they drummed up evidence of corruption and betrayal, every document a testament to their fight for truth. But the stakes felt treacherously high, and with every passing moment, the looming threat of Kim Tae-hwan's wrath hung heavily over their heads, palpable enough to choke the air they breathed. Just as they believed they had orchestrated a semblance of control by leaking snippets of their findings to eager journalists, the tide turned brutally against them. The relentless ping of Minji's phone shattered their fragile confidence, revealing taunting messages that dripped with betrayal. Someone from within had leaked their plans, exposing their every move. Panic surged through her, as icy tendrils wrapped around her heart. "It's Eugen," she breathed, capturing Jaiwan's full attention. He glanced at her, his brow furrowing deeply. "How can you be sure?" he pressed, skepticism overshadowing his expression. Minji felt the weight of her intuition as she recalled Eugen's increasingly cold demeanor, how she had always felt more like a looming threat rather than a friend. "She's been jealous of us since day one," Minji asserted, conviction slipping through her uncertainty like a steadfast ally. The truth was an undeniable entity between them, one that linked their fates more intimately than either could have ever anticipated. With the walls closing in, the air was thick with the scent of perspiration and fear as they slipped out the back door and into the darkened alley, the night echoing the urgency of their prospects. Every heartbeat felt like a drumroll of destiny, every footstep a countdown to inevitable confrontation. Jaiwan instinctively took Minji's hand, their fingers locking together fluidly, grounding them against the chaos that threatened to swallow them whole. Just then, the sounds of shouting pierced the heavy dusk as they recognized the harsh voices of Taehwan's men tracking their escape. "We need to split up. It's our only chance," he declared, determination etched into every line of his chiseled face. Minji shook her head, the thought of separation terrifying her more than the imminent danger. "No, we stick together. We're stronger that way," she shot back, her voice trembling with a fierce resolve despite the danger swirling around them. He saw the truth in her eyes, a courageous spark igniting a choice he didn't want to make, but knew deep down would be necessary. Reluctantly, he agreed, the sacrifices they made for each other crystallizing in that moment. Suddenly, the distant sound of footsteps intensified, reverberating off the alley walls and pushing them deeper into the shadows. The unrelenting game of cat and mouse had begun. As they maneuvered through the darkness, adrenaline coursed through their veins, turning every corner of their locus into a minefield of potential peril. Minji's heart raced violently against her ribcage when they heard a shout. The enemy had picked up their trail. "They're coming," Jaiwan hissed, the urgency in his voice sending chills down her spine. "We can't let them catch us." With one final glance back, as though the sight of their pursuers would form a concrete wall behind them, they sprinted toward the subway entrance, Minji leading the way, fueled by a blend of instinct and fear. The echoing clamor of the sirens above felt surreal against the pounding of her heart. They burst onto the platform just as the train arrived, its bright headlights breaking through the encroaching gloom, illuminating their escape route. The doors swung open, revealing sanctuary for just a moment, but it was a sanctuary cloaked in danger. As they dove into the train, breathless and frantic, Minji could sense the danger trailing them closely, a merciless predator waiting for the opportune moment to strike. It was then, crammed into the eerie silence of the train car, that the severity of their predicament crashed down upon them. For every truth they uncovered, the stakes climbed higher, intertwining their fates tighter and tighter until the line between alliance and attraction became unbearably blurred. In those fleeting yet eternal moments, as the world whizzed by outside the train window, Minji felt the weight of hope entwined with desperation. With every passing second, their past filled with secrets threatened to unravel everything they had fought for. The realization dawned on her that in the end, it wouldn't just be their lives on the line, their hearts had become irrevocably intertwined within this deadly dance, forged in the heat of chaos and betrayal. As silence cloaked them, she turned to Jaiwan, meeting his gaze with an intensity that screamed of their shared struggles. "We're going to make it out of this, right?" she whispered, her optimism battling the shadows creeping in their hearts. He nodded, his mind racing to devise a plan against the looming threat of his father, the dangerous power he had inherited, and the treachery that lay ahead. "We have to," he replied, conviction lacing his tone as he squeezed her hand tighter, a silent promise binding them together in this tumultuous fight for truth and survival. Little did they know that their enemies were closer than they believed, and the true danger was not merely about unmasking the traitors entwined in their lives, but about unraveling the secrets lurking in their own hearts. As the velvety shadows of evening enveloped the bustling streets of Seoul, the atmosphere crackled with suspense, an echo of the storm brewing within the corporate walls of K Group. Kim Tae-hwan sat behind his lavish desk, fingers steepled, eyes piercing with an intensity that spoke of calculated chaos and impending betrayal. He had orchestrated his empire meticulously, but the fallout from Minji's relentless pursuit of justice threatened to dismantle everything he had built. With a smirk painting his lips, he called in his attorney, ready to strike a deal that would keep him ahead of the law while dangling the prospect of exposing influential names that lay in his wake. "The authorities won't touch me if they think I'm more valuable alive than incarcerated," he declared coldly, his confidence radiating a chilling aura that made the room feel instantly colder. Meanwhile, outside the imposing glass facade of K Group, Minji and Jaewon prowled the streets with a mission burned into their hearts. They refused to let Tae-hwan slither away from the consequences of his actions, knowing all too well that every step backward he took was a step away from justice. Minji's voice was laden with determination as she said that they could not let him escape punishment. It was now or never, and she felt the weight of every discarded life echoing through her veins. Jaewon, drawn deeper into the storm that was Minji, felt her anger igniting a fire he had long since buried under layers of corporate armor. His gaze was fierce and resolved as he responded by saying that they would rally the public, fight the shadows that loomed over K Group, and ensure that Tae-hwan's misdeeds would be laid bare for all to see. The pressure was mounting as news outlets picked up on the swirling rumors, sharp and unforgiving like a winter chill. The walls of K Group trembled under the weight of scrutiny, and within those walls, Tae-hwan realized the magnitude of the threat against him. Refusing to succumb, he retorted darkly to his attorney, "We will bring them to their knees, my name will not be dragged through the mud." But even as he plotted, the tides were turning. Under the feigned control of the corporate tyrant, Minji and Jaewon put their plan into action, an alliance of fury and longing formed in the crucible of shared struggles. The weight of their task pressed upon them like an invisible shroud. They were no longer mere players in this dangerous game, but architects of a revolution that promised to dismantle the very foundations of manipulation and deceit that Tae-hwan relied upon. As the prosecution found itself swept up in the public's outcry, the decision hung heavy in the air, a choice to uphold justice against a backdrop of societal expectations and political maneuvering. From behind the veil of their public personas, Minji felt hope surge within her like the first bloom of cherry blossoms after a long winter. She understood the stakes, recognizing that every fragment of her father's life could either be avenged or further silenced if they failed. As the law closed in on K Group, Tae-hwan's omnipresent shadow began to fade, but he wouldn't go easily. With a chilling calmness, he leaned into Jaewon's face, eyes narrowing in a cold glare, leaving him with a haunting warning as the first blue lights flickered at the entrance of the building. "Power never truly disappears. It just finds a new face," he said with an unsettling confidence that sent a chill down Jaewon's spine, stirring the adrift tethers of their complicated past. The suffocating atmosphere of despair began to crack as Minji stood beside Jaewon, a reminder of the stakes involved not just for themselves but for every soul Tae-hwan had trampled upon in pursuit of his insatiable hunger for control. Together, they prepared to face the consequences of this confrontation, bolstered by the knowledge that justice, however elusive, could no longer remain a stranger to their entwined destinies. In that moment of flickering hope and simmering tension, they knew this was their fight, and they would emerge more than just survivors. They would be catalysts for change. With Tae-hwan's downfall echoing through the halls of K Group, the company trembles under the weight of scandal and betrayal. Jaewon stands at a precipice, staring at the crumbling legacy left by a father he can no longer admire. He feels the heavy burden adjusting on his shoulders, questioning whether to embrace the empire built on hidden secrets or forge a new path, one that resonates with the values Minji has instilled in him. Meanwhile, Minji thrives in her newfound strength, shedding the remnants of her past like old skin. Standing by the Han River, the waves reflecting her resilience, she takes a deep breath, contemplating the mountains she has climbed and the family bonds she has reconstructed. Just then, Jaewon appears beside her, the familiar warmth now emanating from him, casting aside the coldness she once encountered. As he stands there, vulnerable yet resolute, he turns to her, his eyes no longer the calculating orbs of a CEO, but the tender gaze of a man transformed. He admits with a hint of apology in his tone, "I told you once that people like you are nothing to me," punctuating the words with a pause that hangs heavily in the air. "I was wrong." Her heart skips a beat, memories of their chaotic journey flooding back, the fights, the betrayals, the unlikely alliance they forged against the odds. Yet, What lingers in that moment between them is the undeniable truth that they are forever intertwined, not just by their trials but by a burgeoning love that neither expected nor fully comprehended. As the river flows behind them, a symbol of change and continuity, both of them know that the battle for justice is just beginning, and their new chapter is fraught with uncertainties yet to come. The shadows of their past still loom, but now, they will face whatever lies ahead together. While the ending leaves the specifics of their relationship unresolved, one thing echoes clear: their lives are interwoven in ways they are only beginning to understand. And just as the sun dips below the horizon, a radiant light glints through the water, hinting at the journey yet to unfold. For Minji and Jaiwon, the resolution of one battle ignites the spark of another, leading them toward a future that promises both peril and possibilities, urging them to take that leap into the unknown. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to Happiness of Love. That way, you won't miss any of our heartfelt romances. See you in the next love story.